This is The Legend of SOH CAH TOA by Dana R. Camp, reprinted with permission from the mathematics teacher, April 1990, copyright 1990 by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. All rights are reserved. Although I am the author, this is from a publication by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, which holds the copyright. This story is intended solely for non-commercial classroom use. For a complete statement of NCTM's copyright policy, see the NCTM website at www.nctm.org. When I first learned of the mnemonic SOH CAH TOA, I was told that a legend went along with it. Every year when introducing trigonometric ratios in my pre-calculus classes, I searched to find such a story in an effort to anchor the acronym. I finally decided to create one myself. The result is the Trigonometric Review's exclusive story on the origin of SOH CAH TOA. The mystery of the derivation of SOH CAH TOA, the acronym for trigonometric ratios, has finally been solved. Recently, investigators traced its roots to a tribe called the Hypotenuse. This ancient clan had an amplitude of customs that modern civilization would consider odd. Only lately has it been discovered how these practices gave birth to SOH CAH TOA. The Hypotenuse lived in dwellings that looked like lean-tos and that rested against trees, as illustrated. These homes were not shaped like hexagons or pentagons, but simply three-sided polygons called trigons. Often, Hypotenuse would describe one of these homes as trigon on my tree. Hence, the land of the Hypotenuse became known as trigonometry. Another curious fact about the Hypotenuse was that they did not speak, but instead used only sign language. They had very sensitive ears, and even the most subtle noise would cause them excruciating pain. Not only did they avoid making a sound, but they kept their hands over their ears. Since their hands were always occupied in this way, they had to sit and gesture with their feet when they wanted to talk. Naturally, communication was a difficult process. Because talking was so arduous, the Hypotenuse published a daily periodical of events, which became known as the Hypotenuse. The Hypotenuse was not a very reliable journal because the Hypotenuse could not always agree on what was to be printed. The leaders of the two major political parties would meet daily to discuss the editorials and interpolations of the day's events. The conservatives, called degrees because most of them had PhDs, and the radicals, known as radians, short for radical hypotenuse, would sit in a big circle so that all could see the conversation. Invariably, at this so-called circular function, one of two things would happen. If the factions could not agree on how to present an article, they would get very angry and separate to sit at opposite sides of the room. If this situation persisted, a sign was given that there was an opposite over the hypotenuse. Sometimes everyone would agree on the news. If the degrees could be converted to the radians angle on a story, or vice versa, they would remain seated next to each other in adjacent seats. When this occurred, the cooperation signal was given, the cosine so named because the leaders were sitting adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now this sequence continued for many years until a visitor from Argentina observed such a meeting and offered a suggestion. He pointed out that if they could not agree, the rational thing to do was simply to publish two bulletins, one for each of the divergent views. In other words, the tangent said that they could remain opposite over adjacent and still publish the hypotenuse. Upon hearing this radical suggestion, the Hypotenuse fell into a violent argument. A change of such a hollow tradition was bound to waggle a few toes. The Hypotenuse argued long into the night until their feet were exhausted. Not only did they never agree on the tangent's suggestion, but days of soaking their toes in the tub were required before the acute pain subsided, and many of them could converse again. From that day forward, the famous argument has become known as the Great SOH CAH TOA.